We'll start by pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So Jane was last to be trying to promote tonight.
And Kelly is.
Kelly is here. Yep. Okay, perfect. Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is correspondence.
And there is none.
Okay. Again, there we go. Second item are reports from our student board of education representatives.
Well, to start, I'd like to say thank you so much for our name tag. I'm very grateful that they're finally here. They're beautiful. So a lot of clubs have begun to have their first meetings. So we've got the health club just had its first meeting on September 20th. They haven't yet picked what like disease or illness they're going to cover throughout the year and do their fundraisers for and such. But I think that they're just like working on getting all the freshmen up to date with what's going on there. And then Quiz Bowl has begun. They kind of just give each other trivia questions and stuff. It's a fun little club. They do it every Thursday. Ecology Club is on Fridays. Interact's first meeting was the 19th. And the news crew had their first meeting on September 7th. They meet every Thursday for our Monday morning news. Rambler, our newspaper, started their meetings and they're already working on the September and October editions. And then the Gray Matter Club had their first meeting on the 22nd. So the Gray Matter Club is this, it's a new club started by, I think it was started by Kaylin Laskowski last year, maybe the year before. And it's about like this neurological issue. I'm not entirely familiar on it.
They're connected with, they do something with Yale.
Yeah,
Okay, and it really is kind of neuroscience studies.
yeah, it's really a really cool club and a cool project, and it's very interesting. So they had their first meeting on the 22nd. And then in school, we had open house on the 14th, which included a lot of students who went through and they talked about the different aspects at OSHS, as well as there was a tour through the building where parents followed their child's schedule. So they went to each period as their child would. And then the first student government meeting was on the 14th. So we do have a new government this year. So the first meeting was really important for just like kicking things off, hit the ground running kind of a thing. Our executive board elected their officers. So we have Carly Castro as our president and Scarlett Pulowski as our vice president. And then Erin Pirelli is the secretary. So Carly and Scarlett are both seniors and Erin's a junior. And then a lot of the goals from the new strategic plan are beginning to be discussed with the students. So the students are being roped into this. They know what's going on in the building. They know what we're working on. They're excited. We are thrilled for these strategic goals. And then the environmental science class, they just went on their first field trip to the farm. They studied soil at the farm.
Exciting.
And for our extracurriculars, I'd say that the biggest thing going on right now is our fall play, which is Pride and Prejudice. They had they finished their auditions and callback on the 14th, and the cast list came out on the 15th. And I believe that the lead is being played by Caitlin Kidd, who is a senior. There was also a presentation from the Rotary, which was, I believe, sponsored by the Interact Club, and this was about climate change. And students went through a simulation and listened to guest speakers, and they're planning for the presentation next year to be about government. And also the executive board is beginning their discussions on homecoming. I know there was a survey sent out a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, about whether or not students wanted to have homecoming at our school or at an outside location. And I think people are really interested in that being an option, that we were going to be able to possibly have a different location for a homecoming this year. And for sports, these are the scores and records as of Friday morning when this report was submitted. So girls soccer won 7-0 against Amistad on the 11th. They lost 3-1 against Valley on the 14th. They beat North Brantford 5-0 on the 16th, and they tied Haddam Killingworth 0-0 on the 20th, which brings their record to 2-1-1.
They're playing Valley right now.
Yeah. That's why Mr. Saunders isn't here.
Boys soccer had a game against Valley on the 14th, and they won 5-0. And another game against Old Line on the 20th, which they won 6-0, which brought their record to 2-0-1. Field hockey beat Waterford 7-0 on the 9th. They beat Westbrook 1-0 on the 12th. They lost to North Brantford 0-6 on the 15th. They tied Granby 0-0 on the 16th, and on the 19th, they beat Valley 4-1, which brings the record to 3-1-1. And then football and cheer. Football has been having an incredibly successful season, especially relative to some of our past seasons, and students are very excited about that. Everybody loves to have a successful football team, and it makes games a lot more enjoyable and exciting. It's also made these games a lot more popular. Many more people are making an effort to go to these games, even though they're at Morgan. And on the 16th, they beat Coventry 54-0, and that brought their record to 2-0. Cross country, both the boys and girls team won their meets. So overall, we've been having a very, very successful sports season so far.
Yeah, good start to the year, I'd say. The first month.
Thank you for your report. Board members, do you have any questions for our board reps?
Yeah, thanks so much for your report. I just wonder if you could give me a little more information on the Quiz Bowl. Is that like an academic?
Okay. Quiz Bowl is not very widely spoken about at the high school, I'd say. But I'm pretty sure it's just like they kind of sit and do little trivia questions, so they can ask about all the different topics. So there's like science and math and social studies. And it's after school. I think it's like maybe 45 minutes to an hour. It's not very long. I think it's like more just fun than academic.
Is it led by an advisor or student led or?
Last year, I'm pretty sure it was led by Mr. Rosenheim, but he's not in the district anymore, so I'm not certain who it's led by this year.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is our audience of citizens. So we'll right past that. And next item is our meeting minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes. So move. Second by Alan. Discussion. Hey, no discussion. Let's vote. All those in favor of the minutes? Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay. Next item on our agenda, are our teacher, administrator, and evaluation plans. Would you like to talk about that?
I'm gonna let Chris Fletcher, who prepared this memo and this presentation, talk a little bit about it. This is something we are required to do annually, and so we get this to you every year, typically at this time. And Fletcher, if you want to take it from there.
Yes, of course. Good evening, everyone. So with the teacher evaluation plan, the PDEC has worked very diligently over the past several months, meeting and discussing what the evaluation plan was, and knowing that the Public Act has kind of modified how we're doing it, where we used to have a overall summative rating that has been removed. We have the legislation, excuse me, has also added components of it where we have a paraprofessional as part of our PDEC committee, and they're serving in that capacity as well. So the evaluation plan is reflective of a lot of those changes. Moving into the ways that we have done SLOs in the past, they all had a percentage where it was leading us to a summative rating at the end. As you can see inside of the report, all of those percentages have been removed. We have increased our number of SLOs, our student learning objectives, from 1 to 2. This is reflective of pre-pandemic evaluation plans, where we were provided more flexibility during the pandemic, and we had taken advantage of those. Now we're moving in a direction to see if we can account for a lot of the changes that align with our strategic plan. And having this increase in SLOs allows us to evaluate those components. Other components of this is looking for 2 measurements of student growth and outcome with respect to those SLOs. So each SLO is measured by 2 IGDs. There's also the cycle in which our non-tenured teachers and our tenured teachers are going through observations. We have 2 informals, 1 formal, 1 review of practice for our non-tenured teachers. That would be any teacher who has been working in that capacity for less than 5 years, and tenure is granted by the state. So we're using that as a way to evaluate and monitor the growth of our professionals throughout the district. And then in a way to evaluate some of our tenure teachers, we were looking for a reasonable way that we can bring people through that process. And that's where you'll see inside of our tenure structure of 3 cycles. That way our teachers every year are moving through those cycles. And the difference between cycle 1 and cycle 2, there is none. But in cycle 3, you'll see that we've added a review of practice as well as a formal observation to those. So it's just a way for us to have our tenured teachers who have been inside of the district working through our formal observation process and review of practices.
Thank you, that was great, and I just want to add that I am really pleased to see the formal observations back. Because it's really the only opportunity you have to look at plans and how a teacher plans and how they think about their planning is incredibly important to know when assessing the quality of instruction, and it's also a really great professional conversation between an administrator and a teacher. This is nice. It's not just non-tenured teachers who will get opportunities for formals. It's also once every 3 years, formals will happen with tenured teachers. And I think that really adds to the professionalism.
Any question?
So Dr. Fletcher, just some questions. What professional development was provided for the administrators? First question, and then how do you assure fidelity of the model that's, process?
So in terms, now for professional development, are we talking specifically for administrators or throughout the district?
Not the district, right? Because it would be obvious applicable to the administrators and the teachers and the PD or the non-professional.
So the professional development for this will be ongoing. We are working together at the DLT to have ongoing conversations and learning around how does this professional learning plan fit in with our strategic plan. So how does the PDEC work that we've done meet our needs for our strategic plan? That's going on in all of our district leadership team meetings. It's happening in one-to-one meetings with myself and Krista, Heston, and Joe. We're constantly meeting as a team to discuss this and determine professional learning needs. Just last Monday, in aligned with this, we had Dr. Rydell Harrison with our DLT providing professional learning. We have upcoming professional learning with Dr. Marisa Ferraro, who is working on the multilingual component, which is also part of the cultural responsive aspects in that sense of belonging. So we're constantly working on that professional learning where we're providing opportunities during those district PD days, but then also during our meeting times. so that we're turning all of our meeting sessions into learning time.
And CPRO as well. So
Oh, I left off CPRO. CPRO is working with us during our DLT time. They're also reaching out to all of our buildings and our building leaders to schedule time to work with their school improvement teams. We're having a lot of professional learning scheduled and coming for this.
I'm sorry, get that last acronym that you used.
Oh, CPRO, CPRO, I know I wrote it down too.
Policy and public policy and something like
Research
research.
and leadership.
Thank
They
you.
just think, oh,
Thank you.
show up.
Center for Public Research and Leadership.
They're out of, they're the Columbia University. So they're from Columbia University.
Thank
But they, many acronyms, I'm trying to break them all up.
And we've stopped saying the names for so long, we don't even know their names anymore.
I hear
Steve, that question? Yeah, so in these, is this just something that just started, or we've been having these professional development ideas and talks moving forward over the last period of time?
Through the last period of time.
Through the last period of time.
Yes.
In these, is it ever come up, say, you know, I hear that we're talking about a lot of things, but do we also talk about the things that maybe shouldn't come up in the classrooms, maybe shouldn't be presented, you know, how we stay on topics of the classrooms? Is that brought up? Is that discussed?
It's always discussed in terms of like the content. So we are always looking at providing professional learning around what the content is inside of that classroom. So we are always looking at like whatever our BOE approved curriculum is and what they're seeing as subject matter is. What we're actually talking about is how do we make that content applicable and reachable and accessible to all of the students who are in there. So that's like the number one thing that we're constantly trying to focus on is how do we ensure that students have an opportunity to access the information that we're trying to present to them? And I think those strategies are the number one things that we're focused on inside of our PDs. All right.
Yeah.
Dr. Fletcher, just give an example, what does the support plan look like?
So the support plan is one of the plans for a teacher who may not be meeting the baseline.
Mhm.
So that would be additional formal observations,
Okay,
additional reviews of practice, additional coaching time with like our instructional leadership team,
and a mentor, they can choose a mentor. Yeah, okay.
opportunities to attend additional professional learning. So that if this is an area of struggle, whether it's behavior management or instructional practices, we can have opportunities for them to attend professional learning for that.
And those, we have not finalized that assistance plan for this year yet. I don't imagine it's gonna look very different from what we've done in the past, because once someone is performing at that level, you're looking at a progressive discipline kind of model. This teacher and administrator evaluation plan is really a growth model. People have an opportunity to work on goals over multiple years now. It really is about growing your practice. When we get into a situation like that, you really are sort of following your typical labor HR process. With lots of meetings, with representatives, with coaching, with mentoring, lots of writing, lots of feedback. With the eventual goal being improvement and coming off the plan or severing the relationship.
There's a follow-up question on that, and you know, I imagine this doesn't happen very often in the Old Saybrook school system. What I'm hearing is there's a lot of focus on the teacher, and that's great. In those situations where there's been somebody identified as needing some progressive help, we'll call it, is there ever a opportunity taken to have the children in those classrooms have a discussion with them and say, hey, you know, we understand some things might not be going the way you would like to perceive them. You know, bring them into feeling a sense of, hey, this, they've obviously observed something, you know, whether we take, you know, that into consideration or not, they
they've probably observed something in the classroom and maybe a way like, hey, things are working, we understand there may be some concerns. We're working on them to make things better for you, just to kind of circle back, and the end user is the children. And I imagine that some feedback to them, in a situation would be great.
I can comment on the recent past year. I am really happy to see that a lot of our teachers, particularly at the high school and middle school level, are talking about asking for feedback from students, whether they do that formally or informally. Some do surveys, some just ask. But that's something that a lot of teachers have been able to include in their evidence of how they think things are going. They don't have to share that with us. They're choosing to do that on their own, which is great. Where we will talk to students is if a problem becomes apparent because a complaint has been made, or because we've witnessed something ourselves, or a student has come to us and said we have concerns, which fortunately we have good enough relationships between the building administrators and kids that can happen. Or often we'll go to another teacher and say, explain to me why this is happening in my class, and the teacher will do what he or she can to support the situation. That's typically how things happen. In our teacher's contract, this is not true for administrators, but in our teacher's contract, it says that all complaints that are lodged need to be reported to the teacher. That's the language in the contract, and that's not to say you have to report kids' names, but you have to say, hey, we've got this complaint, a parent has called and said such and such. And I think the purpose of it being in the contract, it predates me, is to give the teacher an opportunity to address the problem. So that's typically how it's worked here. We're a small enough district that things do tend to surface, not all the time. Sometimes it takes a while, but it does happen. I don't know if there's anything more formal anybody wants to add to that. Is it possible for us to see Joe's face during the meeting?
Half a joke.
No, you're behind, you're behind the chat.
Wait, did you ask to not see my face, Jan? Is that what you said?
You were just a white square.
I asked for the blue dot, but Trent couldn't do it.
I wanted to make eye contact, see if there's anything going to add, but I couldn't see him.
Any other questions?
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much for the information.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled just to know about the paraprofessionals being involved.
Yeah.
You know, now in professional development, because so often they're the ones that are holding up the class.
Yeah.
You know, for many of the students, especially the ones that have special needs. And so I think that's, you know, exciting, because that's probably moving statewide. I would imagine that they're part of this.
Yeah, it's a requirement for PDEX, yeah.
Which is-
And the other thing I have to say is, I am very excited about what the state came up with for teacher and administrator evaluation, which goes into effect in 24-25. So you're gonna see some tweaks again, which is fine. We'll call this a pilot year. We have brought back some of the freedoms that were in place during COVID, you know, like the formal observations and stuff. But I am very excited about what's going to happen in 24-25, because if PDEC committee is able to pull it off, we're going to have a really great professional growth opportunity that is, the way Dr. Fletcher said, really ongoing. It's embedded in all of your meetings. It's embedded in your faculty meeting, right? It's happening all the time. And so that it's seamless.
One thing that might be interesting is if, like, down the road, if some teachers came in and talked about how it's helped them,
Yes,
you know, develop.
that's a great idea. If we can get some folks from PDEC to bring in
Yeah.
some colleagues
Yeah,
to do that, maybe a little later in the year.
yeah, or even, I mean, I was thinking maybe 24-25, but like,
Yeah.
as soon as, like, not too soon, right? Because that doesn't have enough time to have an impact.
Right.
But, you know, next year, whenever you think it might be most
Yeah.
helpful to hear that perspective, I think that'd be
Great
great.
idea.
I was gonna say that, under the, I think it says how those, is that student learning outcomes? Is that?
Yeah, that's doing learning objectives.
Objectives,
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
So it was saying that there's an opportunity to incorporate a variety of these, and teachers can choose. So is that part of professional development, so they would know, for instance, evidence of student outcomes when incorporating culturally responsive practices? That might be a whole understanding of what that means.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to write the correct, like, objective, because we're, in this district, we're totally about culturally responsive, because we have multilingual students are actually what some of those things mean, perhaps. And then lastly, I just wanted to know if you could just tell me a little bit about the artifacts. It says something about administrative artifacts. And I know this and that's, yeah, let me share it. Yeah, should expect, she's like, one artifact.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's it, with an artifact?
Okay, so I'll start with the first part. One thing that we're very fortunate with is that the ongoing professional learning inside this district is now just being put into practice. And to share some of Jan's excitement, like I'm excited too, because without the percentages inside of the evaluation plan, it really focuses it on growth. And how much growth can we make with our students? And really, how can we target any of our students who need more support inside of our classrooms and see how we can get them to grow? Knowing that we've had things listed in the strategic plan for the past several years around equity and belonging and high quality instruction, this is just doing what we were already claiming that we were doing. It's just an opportunity for us to grow inside of it even more. And year 3 is a perfect time for that. So the work that we've been doing, that the leaders have been doing with their staffs, this is just ongoing work that's feeding into it. So I'm happy to say that we've had professional learning in a lot of this, and we're just putting that into action inside of our SLOs and trying to show a growth model. In terms of the artifacts, this can be any of the professional things that teachers are doing, like their planning tools, meeting times, interaction with families, interaction with students. They can bring any of these components in, and they can say, hey, let's review this aspect of my practice, of my professionalism that I'm showing either within the school or with families. And it's an opportunity just to review that and receive any feedback on it.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
A follow-up question to what Eileen had asked around culturally responsive practices. I wonder if one of the administrators would be able to give an example of what that might look like in a classroom.
You know, I wonder if we should talk about our onboarding that we're developing. I think probably, would you be willing to talk about that?
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
talk about
So, one of the things that we realized that we needed to do a better job with was when we have a new family that comes in, particularly a family from another country or a family that doesn't speak English. And how do we make sure that we have all the correct supports in place and that we're gathering the information that we need from them to be able to support them as a school community, but also within the classroom. So the goal here is to pull a committee together from across the district, including teachers, secretaries, counselors, everybody that would be involved in that intake process, and identify what information we need to gather, what information is going to be most helpful to support them in the classroom. Because every child has a different need and a different background and different strengths, and we want to be able to combine all those together to be able to support them in the classroom, and also make sure that all of the pieces that the family needs to be able to register and so forth, that there's not any barriers to them being. So that's the whole idea behind it, is to be able to gather that information, share that information in an appropriate way to best support the child.
And what's great about that is, we sometimes run the risk of making assumptions about these students, right? And so this allows you to collect some personal information that lets you know the student quickly, and be able to make some connections, and also maybe to assist their learning by engaging in the things that they're interested in without assuming we understand the child.
Sometimes it's very difficult. We get transcripts from other countries and we don't necessarily, sometimes we have to have them translated, and two, sometimes what they're discussing is their standards or their curriculum doesn't necessarily align to ours. So we're trying to figure that out and where to best place that child and make sure that they have the right supports. And that we're pushing enough rigor on them as well, that they're successful and the right level.
Fantastic.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on. Next item on our agenda is the CAVE award application. Do you have any further to do with that?
Yeah, so every year, CAVE does have sort of a juried award process. Don't ask me much about the details because I don't necessarily think I know them. I'm not sure they're published anywhere, but they do get announced and they are shared after the Katie Caps conference in November, which many of us go to. We have been recognized for many years. You have been recognized for many years as a high functioning Board of Education, both at level 1 and for the last 11 years, maybe?
Actually, 2010 was the
Oh,
first time, so
2010,
actually
level 2.
13 years we've won, because I did that math for you earlier, so 2010 and every year since, and obviously this was the 2023 year, so.
And so you have to provide evidence of policies and procedures in the areas listed: board leadership, student achievement, board member professional development, policy, community relations, labor organizational leadership. And so some of that professional development that some of you are engaged in here or online, or you go to conferences, is something that they're looking for. Your policy work, and how we are meeting the needs of the community. It's been a high functioning board. We have been very successful. We all get our picture taken with the commissioner. And it's very nice to be recognized, and I think it's something that the board should be proud of. And so we're looking for a motion to allow us to submit the application that includes a full essay written by Trevor, the board chair.
Second. By Crane. Any discussion or questions?
Where does the picture go? I don't think I've ever
In the
seen a
picture,
picture.
we don't have a picture, we have the plaque. Where was the last picture? A good question. We just moved those into all those plaques, right? Yeah, so we're trying to get all the recognition out front, but that's an excellent question.
We do have it taken every year.
Yeah. Good
It
question.
was on our website.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Last year
Was it?
was on our website.
Oh, okay.
Um,
You think
So I
Kate
was-
was?
That's not very hoarding the picture.
Yeah, I was there to take the picture last year.
We'll find out. Where are those pictures?
That's travel. At my house.
Are there any other questions on this? Okay, seeing no other questions, then let's call for a vote. All those in favor of moving forward?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Well, we have a disclosure letter.
No, you have a budget timeline.
Oh, I apologize. Skip right ahead. Before we do this, I want to preface that by just mentioning to the board that with George Chang leaving the board in the late school year, I appointed Karina to be the budget and fiscal chair going forward, well, on an interim basis until we at the election. So Karina will be taking on the role as chair for that committee. So I'll start by saying that.
And so with that, we just wanted to put the timeline, and this is, it never stays exactly the same from year to year, but, or within the year, but this is our budget timeline, moved up by about a week, this year because of, personnel situations here at central office, just trying to account people's schedule. But we plan to have our budget done, ready, and out of budget fiscal completely, or in January, so that we can get it in front of this board by the end of January and be able to be prepared to submit it when the town calls for it. And the town seems to be calling for it a little bit earlier each year, and their meeting is a little bit earlier, so we've moved up our timeline accordingly. So again, if you're gonna put these in your calendar, know that they may be subject to change based on Karina's schedule or anything else that's going on preparation.
I have to figure out how to find that timeline in the.
We just tried to record, I couldn't, yeah, I kept going to Julie's
The letters
disclosure.
there.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah, so it's
I can get you, I can do copy, yeah, I've got to give a copy and happy to give you all copies. Yes, one for each board member would be great, that's here. Anybody else want one besides board members?
Any questions or comments?
So the budget development book, the calendar is on page 3. Which it posts on the website if you go to the digital.
Oh, it's on the, okay.
I can email a digital copy of that to you as well.
So, thank you, Karina, for taking on that role.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Okay, next item on our agenda is our disclosure letter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bed meeting. So every year, Mrs. Pendleton submits this letter, and she would just want us all to be aware that we do business with a company that some of the members of our family are involved with, and they don't in any way profit from anything else. Really would like to share about this standard letter.
Yep, standard. Works in Rhode Island, so just totally separate from. Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to our reports by administration. We will start with the Kathleen E. Goodwin School. Everybody's seen the reports. Are there any questions or comments on the report for the Kathleen Goodwin School?
Yeah, they're in there.
Okay, any questions on the report? Haskins, anything you'd like to add to the report?
I'll add that every year our Lions Club comes into our school and helps us with vision screening. They have a special instrument that takes a picture of the student's eyes. It's very quick. It's very convenient. There's 4 or 5 folks that come in, and it's a great way for them to assist us, but it's also a great way for us to show off our school to some of the public. So really appreciative of the Lions Club for doing that.
Alan.
Has been the Dune therapy dog. Could you tell me a little about that, or tell us a little about that? I'm interested.
Yeah, this is year 2 that Dune, who's a certified therapy dog, comes to visit Goodwin School, and teachers sign up for a schedule. We do have some teachers in the building who are allergic, so we have a map of going to all the external doors, and you'd be amazed on how quickly the kids connect with Dune, and they're so curious about his role and that of his handler. And then also we've had visits where specific students within their behavior plan have earned time with Dune, and it's such a motivator. So we're fortunate. It comes at no cost to the district, and there's huge gain for us as a Goodwin community, and our students really look forward to it.
Thank you, Hassan. That's great the way the dog's been integrated into the school. Where does the dog come from? What program?
It's a private owner, and
Oh, okay.
she works with many schools, and I forget the affiliation of who's Dune is certified by.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
What kind of dog is Dune?
He is a black lab.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I have a question. First of all, congratulations on Goodwin being asked to have a participant sit as a panel member on the state's Early Childhood Council.
Yes, we work closely with a couple of agencies that come in and work with our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in our early childhood program. And the assistance we receive is guidance that goes into the home and witnesses the student at home, witnesses parenting at home, and also comes into the classroom and sees the environment in the classroom, and really helps us to have similar language, similar strategies, and support both the classroom and the parent with helping student that has disabilities or has some types of needs that the parent is really requesting to be serviced.
Exciting, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Heston. Moving on to the Ulster Middle School. Any other questions for Dr. Bachman? Report. Look at anything to report?
I'm sorry?
Look at anything to report on comments?
No, I would just say it's been a really great start to the year, very smooth. The kids are happy and excited to be there, and the teachers are as well. So it's been a great start to the year.
Sorry. Dr. Bachman, a new leadership group has been selected for this year?
Yes, so there were 25 applicants. All 25 were accepted into the group. They do have to go through a process to make sure that they are to be a part of it, including getting recommendations from some of their teachers and so forth. And they're held to a high standard.
And if they don't meet that standard, then we have some conversations about what we can do to elevate them back to that. And they already have some trips planned, as I discussed in the newsletter there. And it's a really great opportunity. The students that were in the program last year got quite a bit out of it, learned a lot of skills. And it was a great way for us to connect with the community as well.
Excellent. And sorry, just one quick
No, please do.
question. So 25 students in what grades?
It's just grade 8. It's a
Just
grade 8
grade 8.
program.
Okay, great. Thank you. Awesome.
Get them ready for the next year. And actually, one of their first trips is to the high school to meet with administration, leaders in the high school. Maybe some of them meet with you and really get them prepared for that next step in their life as well. So they can be leaders in that process.
They ever, those students that are chosen have opportunities to give feedback to the rest of the school?
Actually, that was one of the reasons why we wanted to start this group, was that we saw sometimes that we wanted the positive things to be the parts that were being led amongst the students. And that's that term, like the group needs to change the group. So that was really our first goal, was to have the kids be the ones to help inform and lift up the rest of their class. So they do that, and they do participate in a variety of ways to give feedback to myself, to the grade 8 team. So they have a lot of leadership opportunities within the school, but they also are learning those skills outside of the school with community members.
And so they're able to get feedback like to a 7th grade class or to a 6th grade class.
We haven't, I can't picture of a specific example in that sense yet. It's been more contained in 8th grade, but like, this was only our 2nd year. So this is a good opportunity for us to expand that beyond. And we try to have them act as leaders as individuals, not just as a group. So they may have an opportunity to be a leader within maybe their sports team, which may include kids from other grades and so forth.
And the only reason I mention this, because many years ago, we had a huge exodus of students not necessarily going to the high school. So sometimes some of the students that in the middle school itself didn't really know what opportunities might be provided to them at high school. So kids are like, oh, really? They're doing, art programming, or they're doing music programming, and gosh, my parents wanted me to go to State University or whatever. That's like, no, because they didn't really have a voice, because they didn't really know what there was. So that's why my question is coming from that perspective, like, oh, did you know? Oh, no.
Right, and that's a good opportunity for them to learn about those things as they do that mini group that goes to the high school. Then the rest of the students all go, and they all have an opportunity to learn about all those things at the high school.
I think you and the high school administration and athletic director have done a great job of fixing that communication problem, because there's so many opportunities now for the kids to meet with kids from the high school, go to the high school, have high school kids come to the middle school. That we really have addressed that really great. They have addressed that really great.
High school students do a great job of recruiting them and treating them as well.
Great, thank you. Moving on to those here at high school, the board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Anastasio on the high school report?
I just want to ask about the NEASC, Joe and Jan. In the past, the board has been involved with that. Will we be, or do we need to be, or I'm good not being involved, but I just want to know what the process looks like.
Yes, you're all in charge.
Okay.
No, so NEASC has sort of revised how they do it. It's very different than when we had our last visit. I believe it was 2014. I think I had just come on board. It's more of a growth model, as Kari pointed out earlier in his presentation about teacher evaluation. There's actually a collaboration. Our first visit is actually November 8th. Where a member of NEASC is going to come out and meet with me. They're going to meet with he's going to meet with the steering committee, the report writers, and then a 1-hour presentation to the faculty about the process. And the following year, we have a 2-day visit with a team that comes and we start talking about the collaboration. We're very excited about this. We actually had a chance to defer another year because of COVID. And I had a conversation with Jan, and we both agreed that we're excited. We love to have this outside organization come in because we're proud of the progress we've made. We believe in the strategic plan. We really think we're on a good path. And I think it's great to get the feedback from an outside organization, from educators, from every, different types of schools, different fields. We're going to learn a lot about ourselves, and we're going to learn, how to improve and what we're doing well and where we can be even better. So we're very excited about the process. The board will be involved at some point. You will probably be interviewed at some point, but we're going to learn more about that on November 8th.
Thank you.
Great. Alan, go ahead. So we had talked about this, probably back in the spring, and I had expressed an interest as a board member being involved in whatever capacity, Joe, that would be appropriate. So maybe we can discuss this offline with the superintendent, but I definitely would like to be involved in that process to the extent I can be.
Terrific.
Thanks.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Alan.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Joe, a question about, you put on your report, I'm curious, 9th grade English students are wrapping up debates about the ideal wake up song playlist.
I actually
I wanna know what the playlist is.
I actually happened to pop in and some of the choices were very interested. The teacher involved was sharing what his own son chose as the playlist. So it was some Beatles songs, I believe. So the kids were trying to really it was honing in on their interest, which is music, and getting them the skills to debate and think and in terms of what makes the best wake up song. So it was the kids were really engaged and they were having fun with it. So.
And I'd like to add, Joe, I don't know if you saw, I forwarded an email to you, Corinne, and Dave today about the $10,000 grant for the dual enrollment.
Yes.
Yeah, so they doled out some money and Old Saybrook, because we filled out an application, ended up getting $10,000 for dual enrollment courses, which means kids would be getting college credits for more classes that we want to develop while they're in high school.
We're trying to improve that link. We're also looking at the trades as well, in terms of expanding opportunities for our students to gain that college credit. ECE has been a topic of conversation of what we're taking a look at what we have in the program of studies and what could easily slide into it. As Jan always says, if we're adding something, what's coming off? Because, we are a small comprehensive high school. But we're trying to expand our opportunities for advanced coursework for our kids, and we're very excited about it. And a number of teachers have already met with us about possibilities for the future. So we'll probably be coming with you with some proposals soon, because we know the timeline is tight.
I was gonna say, your reference here to help choose students creating posters to be donated to Goodwin School is exactly what we're talking about this evening in terms of bringing student work from the high school, say, to the middle school or to Goodwin School, so that kids can begin to see things that are done by not just posters that you can order, but really student generated. And that's exciting too. And I'm sure teachers point that out to this came from the high school and kids are doing this. And that always creates an opportunity for kids to go, I can do this.
Yeah, I think connecting more and more is a goal of ours among all three buildings. And actually, to piggyback off what Krista was talking about earlier, November 2nd is the date for the 8th graders to come up for half a day and spend time at the high school. We'll probably have them tour classrooms to get a feel for them in action, to make them more familiar with what we have to offer. And for a small high school, we have a lot to offer, and we want to remind them of that.
Great, thank you. Moving on, Dr. Fletcher, curriculum instruction and assessment, on again.
Well, I can add that it's been exciting moving through these different seasons of the school year, moving from when I onboarded in January and figuring out what the spring looked like, and then going through the summer sessions and having the leadership groups work in the summer and different strategy work, and then having a great competition, which was exciting. And I can sit with Dr. Bachman and said around having a great start to the school year. It's been exciting.
Any questions for Dr. Fletcher? Ellen?
I'll just a comment about the summer enrichment program. It's very successful, it looks like, and we're increasing the student participation. Is that right, every year, or do we have year-over-year comparison?
Yeah, I can get more information with the year-over-year comparison, but I believe we topped last year in terms of our student participation inside of it. student participation in the survey part was a bit lower. We didn't get as many, but the parents
Mhm.
came out and they really spoke very positively about the offerings that we gave, and we're looking to only improve upon that. How can we, really trying to focus on how we offer more opportunities for our ECP to one, the grade one students, because we were a bit low in that. We had a lot of great teachers who stepped up last minute and offered a music program and art program, and I'm very thankful for them stepping up in their busy schedule during the summer. But we didn't have enough offerings in those two areas. So how can we offer more for those groups? And how can we even offer more for our ESY students and our grade 5 to 8 students? Because that's where our offerings were a bit lower.
Actually, Jane was last, I think you had your hand up next.
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, I just have a question regarding the those programs. Are those paid for? Like, is there a tuition fee for those students to attend those courses?
Yes,
Programs?
there's a low tuition fee. I think we're charging $25 per course, but any parent who says that they are having some financial hardship, they can reach out, and we've been able to offer scholarships for those students to participate because we want to be as inclusive as possible.
And if I could just add, Jane, we offered with our federal money, we offered free classes. And something about free makes people less likely to commit, whereas $25, not a huge amount. People committed and students stayed with the class every day. We had much better completion rate and attendance when we added that small fee to the class. It's a little psychological. It really does not cover the cost of the teachers or all of the other supplies that go along with it, but it just kind of gives people some skin in the game.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was wondering, like what the aim was in terms of a number of different factors in terms of whether there's a fee and whether it's something that's attainable for most of the families who want to participate.
Right.
Great.
And it really
Well, actually, it's all. I would say it's attainable for all families because if they can't afford the fee, then they can get it for free. Excellent. Thank you.
I remember, and maybe, Dr. Fletcher can get up to expand on this one. I know when this was first started, there was an opportunity, and maybe Jan will remember, the teachers were very much involved in this programming to be able to look at it, to be able to provide for students a different way of accessing education. And it was very much about learning about project-based learning and many things that they were receiving professional development on or about, and they were implementing. So I was curious from this programming, because that's essential. It's wonderful to actually take the classes, but it's looking at the classes differently. So I wondered if some of those staff members are able to take that training that was received in it. Remember, there was some agency.
We did that through WISE, but we always intended to phase them out. They were supposed to be here for 8 seasons. We actually kept them on longer than we intended to, because we wanted them to build expertise amongst our own staff, and they have done that now. And there's some people who have really gone and run with it. Some people have been able to teach at faculty meetings to their colleagues. But now I think that the creativity and the freedom of these summer enrichment programs is actually broadened even more than just project-based learning. Project-based learning, high quality project-based learning is happening. I won't say organically, because it takes a ton of planning to do high quality project-based learning, but it is happening more as a product of wanting to create hands-on opportunities for students in a really creative, kind of free-form way in the summer, which I don't know if you ever took summer school classes, even in college, they just feel different. Everybody feels different. Everybody feels willing to take risks. And we are encouraging that, and we are seeing it, kind of bleed over into the academic year as well.
Great, thank you, Dr. Fletcher. Okay, moving on. Operations, facilities, and finance. Any other questions for Julie? Report. Would anyone like to add to the report?
We're in the, almost to the first quarter, which we will do a complete and thorough, evaluation of our projection, but this is, you know, showing a $2.2 million balance, don't be fooled. Technology, hardware, equipment, licensing, supplies, repairs, construction services, professional development, all have fairly significant balances because we don't spend those all up front. We'll spend those throughout the course of the year. So looks promising and looks like we're going to have a lot of money left, but much of that will be expended throughout the next several months.
I think board members, any questions for Julie? Okay. Moving on, student services. Sarah, there you are. Any questions for Sarah Smalley on the report? Sarah, is there anything you'd like to add to your report?
I would just like to say that I've been into all of the buildings and most of the special education and related services classrooms to meet students and see teachers in action. And I've been thrilled at the level and quality of instruction that goes on in our special education classrooms. So it reinforces my excitement to be in the district. And yeah, it was a great start.
Thank you, Alan.
This might be a question for Superintendent Peruccio. The naloxone, Narcan training, is that?
Took place for the nurses. Yeah, it did take place.
I'm sorry, they've done it?
Yes.
Oh, they've done it.
They
already.
did it on the 25th, I want to say. Yeah.
Thanks. Get another question.
Right.
So, Sarah, could you tell us a little more about the Love and Logic workshop?
It sounds really interesting.
Sure. That really goes to speak to the level of professional development that we're trying to provide for our paraeducators. We're excited to have them on PDEC now to really have a voice in the district professional development plan. But the Love and Logic kind of the curriculum talks about how to work with perhaps difficult students or students in a difficult spot in a really pro-social, positive way. And really thinking about how our emotions may get involved, but how we should try to keep those at bay when working with students. So it's really practical. They did a lot of thinking about a situation and how they would typically react and working with others to problem solve different ways to react and coach students through tricky situations. I think that they found it beneficial. Actually, I know they found it beneficial. And I'd like to maybe pepper that in throughout our professional development for the paraeducators moving forward.
Great, thank you.
And I would like to say on that topic, if I could, that Old Saybrook has been doing professional development for paraeducators and paying them for 4 additional days long before the state of Connecticut said that we had to, which was just, I think, last year. Because clearly educating people who work with our students every day and what's the latest and greatest, in processes and protocols makes sense. And this gives Sarah and Kathy before her an opportunity to really develop some fine programming for them.
Question for you, Sarah. It wasn't in the report, but I just have a question. Are there students that are Old Saybrook students that are receiving ESY in other district placements?
If you mean our students who are placed in out of district placements, that really depends on their IEP. So if they're recommended for ESY, then they receive it. If not, then they don't. We don't have students who go to like another public school for ESY. Does that answer your question?
Asking because about those students that are out of district placement. For instance, the American School for the Deaf has an ESY program because those children here are not educated in their local public school. So I was just curious to know what students in Old Saybrook might be receiving in a different placement, where they're usually getting their educational services.
Yep. So if it's recommended in their PPT meeting, we certainly make sure that the students have access to that and provide transportation if needed, or modify their day if needed, whatever is really recommended in that PPT meeting for students who are in out of district placements.
Thank you. Brendan's on her time.
Brendan is not. Brendan had another engagement, I think it was soccer or something. Thank you, that he had to be at, he's the site director this evening, but he did submit a report. And although he doesn't necessarily say it, I just want to say a couple of things to sort of embellish or add to this. I am so excited to see our football team winning. I know the girl said that earlier, but they went through a couple of really difficult years.
Yeah.
And then Brendan went through some difficult times when he suggested that the only way to improve this was to be a larger team and connect with Morgan, something that I think that the younger students are doing already, the kids playing football at a younger age. And I think there was some pushback on that, but clearly it has made all the difference. And I am very excited for the kids, and I'm really happy with that decision. I also want to commend him for building leadership amongst captains and amongst athlete leaders. That's one of his goals for the year. And he is running captains events and giving them opportunities to present at the parent nights. And I'm pretty excited to see what that does for developing future leaders in the school. I don't know, Joe or Krista, if you want to add anything else to Brendan's report.
I can chime in. I think the student leadership has really emerged over the last couple of years, and when the 8th graders visit, you know, when the leaders come over, they'll be working with our upperclassmen and our leaders. Even our freshman orientation was modeled after that with our link crew, in terms of the students really run the activities and then they go to Hazen. So we're trying to really cultivate that student leadership and make it part of everything about Old Saybrook High School, so that kids, when they come here, they see themselves in those students and they emerge as leaders themselves.
Maybe Jana, I was just curious, in Brendan's on his report, he had a Spanish club,
Yeah,
so they're integrating those that.
no, so remember, he's athletic director and extracurricular activities director, so he's reporting on all of that.
So there's
Steve. I see the second meeting of the Banner Committee is coming up in early October. I know there's not really any time frame on any of that information. And I know in our last meeting, we talked about getting some communication out to the public. Is that, I haven't seen anything,
You know, Steve,
so.
I have to follow up on that. I don't know. I did talk with Brendan Saunders about that, but I don't know, or I talked with Joe about it, but I don't know where we are there. Joe, do you know if he sent anything out?
He hasn't sent anything out yet. I think he was trying to settle on a date that everyone can meet, so.
And not so much just the date, but just, yeah, let's get out in front of it. We're trying to, you know, and maybe, you know, if we're just having our next meeting in October, I really don't think we're gonna have an answer by the time we have winter sports inside.
Right.
But we might want to get in front of that and say, hey, look, we're not gonna have an answer yet this year, but
Yep.
by next year, we're gonna have it taken care of, whatever we decide.
Yep.
So that nobody starts making their own stories up.
Yes.
I think that's
We'll do that.
a passionate item for some people in this town and
Yeah.
can lead to some
Well,
issues.
I would see why they would be passionate about it if they think that we're just tearing down all the banners and not gonna celebrate kids in any way, which doesn't sound like Old Saybrook High School, but I can see why they would be worried about that.
Moving on to the superintendent school report. Any other questions for superintendent's report? Dan, anything you'd like to add to your report?
No, not really. I think that everything that my colleagues have talked about, you know, I'm involved in some way in all of it, and you can see that here. Maybe just highlighting that we are trying to get late bus runs. Again, that's about equal access to after-school activities. We're working on that with M&J.
I just have a question about the. Actually,
Jan, third to last paragraph, we talked about harnessing innovation. That's a theme this year. And I know the conversation was Scott's and Chat GPT.
ChatGPT, yeah.
Scott, is there any more on that one? I keep saying GBT, it's GPT.
Is it?
It is.
I believe you. So So has anyone more to discuss about IA? I know we piqued everyone's interest. I also know that our attorneys warned us to be very, very careful in the use of it because it collects information on kids and we don't have any student data privacy with an entity like that. I also believe that educators are using it. I know we've played with it in central office to create things. I know it can write lesson plans for you, and those are okay uses of those sorts of things. But the innovation that we are working on with superintendents network is tying work that we already have to do. I'm part of the executive board that kind of sets the theme and then develops it. We're tying work that we have to do with innovation. So we all have to write teacher evaluation plans this year to prepare for next year. How can we innovate within that plan to make sure that we are really opening up doors for professional learning and for preparation to be able to use things that we're not even sure what they're going to be yet? How are we allowing us flexibilities? And so we're really sort of making it concrete to the work that we have to do anyway and still applying innovation to it.
Thanks, Jan. Just a follow-up question there to the chat, GPT. So I actually got the app and messed around with it myself. It's pretty incredible, but there is a disclaimer, or not a disclaimer, there's a agreement that it does collect information. So I'm wondering, in terms of our students, I'm sure many of them have already downloaded the app, or are we out in front of that in terms of being proactive and giving them information about that information is being collected, and we're not at a point where we can advise them how to use it or not use it, or are we, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I would say that we're all pretty novice at it, that we have steered clear of it with students because of that reason, that we don't feel comfortable allowing them to use it. If they're downloading on something, it wouldn't be on our devices, it would have to be on their own devices. And I think that there's a certain amount of education that we probably all need to get to share with kids and with parents. Good point.
Fair enough, thank you.
Yeah, I was just curious about how the kids and chaperones are doing from that camping trip. Did you get with the Bobcat?
Yeah, I would say that the graduation was a very celebratory, upbeat event. And I think the only thing that allowed them to sort of pay respect to that this occurred was that the advisors were there, people who had chaperoned them. They did talk about their injuries. They did have an opportunity to talk about what took place that night. And I thought it was very well done. And I know that the school is keeping an eye on students who may have some sensitivities. And we had a coyote back here one morning. And so Krista and her team went out of their way to make sure that there was an awareness of that. Wouldn't have additional concerns or fears.
Yeah, just to add, I know it was important for that session that evening that I also attended, that for the kids to see that their counselors, that they were in fact, it was the first opportunity for them to be able to see their counselors, that they were in fact okay. Because it wasn't clearly, it was all over the news, it was a very traumatic event for the kids, but they were all, you could see how, as Jan said, it was a very celebratory night. The kids were absolutely giddy. They bonded very much so, and it was a good evening. And I do know that the schools are keeping their eye on the kids. So, yeah.
The students requested to speak with their teachers before school started and talked with them about what had happened, their experience, and the things that they thought would be helpful to them as they came into the school year. And I think that was helpful, and they are very well bonded together, and it's kind of a continuum of support depending on what their needs are. But I think as a group, they're doing pretty good.
Yes, and this refers back to the discussion that Alan was having about ChatGPT, and I'm sure I'm not telling Mr. Bruccio or Dr. Fletcher anything they don't know, but it probably bears some consideration in the future as to how ChatGPT could be used for nefarious purposes in terms of writing someone's history paper for them. I probably wouldn't do it as a rule if I was a strict person that wanted to be educated, but there's always some folks that would take the easy way out and would be able to use this for a purpose that, well, I'm not sure for that's why it was intended, but for a purpose that it shouldn't be used for, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm not sure if we want to talk about that at a board level, or we want to talk, or you want to talk individually amongst the troops to say, hey, we have sort of have to educate the kids in the high school and the kids in the middle school that this is one way to do it, but it's not the way that you're going to learn anything, because it's just regurgitating facts that are obtained from the internet and not really contributing to the education
And
process.
they're not vetted, right? So we don't know the accuracy of all these things, but, you know, I think one of the things that teachers were saying after Matt Mervis got it this time, after Matt Mervis spoke, was that, you know, that a lot has to change about the way we do instruction, the way we do assessment.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's a little bit more in class, and maybe there's a little bit more, you know, which we've been pushing for years, application. Like you have to do something with information, and it's not just write something or model something. You actually have to create something. High quality project based, makerspace stuff, you know. But clearly it's going to be, it's what Cliff Notes were to my generation. Right? And some of us read the book, and some of us read the Cliff Notes. Right.
Well, now if you get the Cliff Notes to write the paper for you, that would be even
That's
better,
even
right?
better, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, anything else, sorry.
So it's a challenge to say the least, because it's evolving literally every day,
Yeah.
and the algorithm changes, and the vast amount of information it collects is just mind-boggling, frankly. So I think there has been studies by agencies to try to find out if someone's using chat, the AI function, and they fail. I mean, in the first 6 months or a year, there's been several entities that have tried to say, hey, this is real, this is AI, and they're not doing so well. So, I mean, it's a challenge to say the least, but to echo what Jim has said, I mean, to stay on top of it, ahead of it is important.
Did you notice in a presentation that he did, he was saying that Jonathan Costa wrote one song and then AI wrote the other side? It was very clear to me which one was written by AI, because it knew nothing real about Old Saybrook. It could tell you where it was, and you know that it had the ocean, it had the river, but it couldn't really get the essence of Old Saybrook. I thought, right, there's something to be learned there
The
about.
critical thinking part.
Yeah, well,
And to be able to detect when it's like written by.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, I thought that was fascinating.
I'm just gonna say that the 2023 relevancy is really happening with the writer's strike. You know, one of their tenets was, don't give us anything that has been coming from AI and ask us to clean it up. But that makes the relevancy so students can be like, it's not just in our classroom, it's happening in the world at large, and people are making decisions in terms of contractual kinds of things because they know that it takes away from their ability to do research and take somebody else's and say, clean it up.
Takes the job.
Right? And the other thing I was just curious about, not that I have any knowledge about it, but so for future wilderness camps, you know, things like that. Like Jim, what do they have for like prevention for coyotes and things? What do they do?
I know nothing about this
Okay.
camp. None of us do, because we
Okay.
don't run it.
Okay.
The only involvement we have is that, they ask us for names at the middle school for names, and it's been going on for, I don't know, 20-something years.
Longer than.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we know nothing. This is the first real conversation I've had with anybody about, you know, what it is and where they go and why they do, and how these people are trained. Of course, I asked all those
For
questions.
sure.
But I do not know what they'll do. All of those advisors, I didn't see their resumes, but they seemed highly credentialed in dealing with it.
Yeah.
They dispatched this
There
thing.
were three of them, they had incredible experience. There were three counselors, and and as far as, I mean, we all know wildlife is just creeping closer and closer and closer. I mean, I live over a preserve, there's all kinds of creatures. This was just such a random act that there was a rabid, you know, this animal that just kept.
On an island.
Yeah, just kept attacking. So the counselors were incredibly great, but they did what they had to do to save the kids, you know, and kept them safe. So, yeah, no, I think it was just incredibly unusual. But they were well trained, and they just jumped right to.
And I think the kids would tell you the benefits far outweighed The way they acted that night. I would say that.
the challenges that those kids, I mean, they scaled cliffs and they whitewater rafted and they carried canoes and really a physical challenge. And some of these kids were pretty small and, they're really roughing. It was
No, I
a real
was just
thing,
asking from the perspective of a disclaimer, like, you know, at the end when they sign something, we're
Yeah,
not responsible for.
Yeah.
The things that happen.
Certainly we are not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, no, so you
Yeah.
can prove the family and,
For sure.
you sign on knowing that, yeah, you're going out in the woods. May the force be with you. So.
Thank you, Jan. So before we move on to our reports by board committees, I invite the administrators to, sorry, Steve, you had a question.
I just had a quick question, the one I'll address today. In the past, I remember we used to have director reports from like the outside organizations that come in and do activities in our school. I believe Family Services used to come in and give a report and
So occasionally we'll invite, youth and family, like they want to do a survey, or they're gonna offer some special program. We've had, Ed Foundation come in and talk about how they're raising money for certain things. And so if they say, hey, we'd love to come present this to the board, we usually give them a space, or if the board says we really would like to know more about what this group is doing with our students, we can certainly reach out to them.
I would love to know what outside organizations are having interactions on a regular basis in our school. And maybe a general outline of what they do. If that's possible for future, maybe we don't need them to come in, but just an outline of what they do in our schools and who they are would be a great idea for me.
Yeah, we do that.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Good guy. Before we move on to our committee reports, I invite our administrators, if they'd like to leave, they can go ahead and leave.
I'm ready.
They'd like to give out the leave.
And students can leave too.
Yes, if they want to. It's up to you.
We can leave.
You guys are great.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with your essay.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
Nice.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Good night. Good night. Good night.
Thank you.
Night, Moon. Night, Moon. Good night, Man in the Moon.
Is anyone out today? or
Night,
still-
Glenn. Out.
Beautiful.
Have a good evening. You too.
Yeah.
And drive safe, Krista.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Good night.
Take care.
Okay, so we will start with budget and fiscal.
So budget and fiscal has a meeting scheduled for October 17th. We may need to reschedule that though, because I'll be out of town.
Okay. Easy enough.
Let me start. Let me start.
Yeah, I've got on here to call you tomorrow to start talking about that. Okay, great.
Thanks, Sabrina. Moving on, Katie.
It's okay, that's the last K Board of Directors meeting. I was really excited because you had the opportunity to be thinking about the Friends of Public Education. And so, the first board meeting was had the Commissioner Charlene Russell Tucker there and telling us some sort of initiatives. And so I made the motion to consider her to be the Friends of Public Education. And so that was seconded. And so at the CAVE conference, she'll be given the CAVE Friends of Public Education Award, which is fantastic. Yeah. And then Trevor asked me just to let the board be aware that the incoming president, the new president of the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, had asked me if I was interested in actually being vice president for professional development. And so the role of that, and I said I would be very glad to do that. And the role of that is to chair the convention committee and advise the new president of CAVE on issues before that particular committee. And I would work very closely with Lisa Steimer, who's staff associate for professional development. And so proposals would come in, and it's really taking a look at what would be opportune workshops and things for Board of Education members from across the state, taking into consideration multicultural opportunities and many other kinds of things.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So you were nominated, does that mean you're actually in?
Tomorrow, the interview. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Yeah.
Facility talent.
So there's nothing to report since the last time, or Julie may counter that, but we met last on August 30th. We don't have any meetings scheduled at this time. And that's it.
I have a facilities question. It may not be with your committee any longer, but it's related to something we as the board discussed, and that was that building, the trades, is that?
Oh, the one that you see down the street.
Oh, that's the Clever House? Yeah.
Two things happened, that made that impossible, the tight timeline.
Yeah.
And the fact that when they went back to do another inspection, it had continued to crack and they thought it was really becoming unsafe. I do believe they're in the process of dismantling it. Yep. With a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
You try.
Right, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Lauren, Steve, you have any updates on her?
Fortunately, I was not able to attend the last meeting. However, I did share with Trent tonight to share out with you the synopsis of the meeting. So
So,
pretty much you guys have what I have on it. I will try to make it. It's
It's tough. I know it's Thursday mornings, it's once a month.
yeah, and it's great as long as it's not Thursday at work. I was gonna attend it by Zoom. Unfortunately, I was sent out on call, so I couldn't do it by Zoom.
Yeah, try it.
Steve, I added your synopsis to the meeting folder for reference tonight, so.
Perfect.
Yes, yeah.
Great. Thanks, Steve. It's strategic planning.
That would be me, and Jan keeps us all very well informed on that, so I have no report.
And the students even talk about it.
Everybody's talking about it.
11 years.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item is demographics.
So our meeting is October 5th, currently scheduled, and that's all I have to report on that. Are we gonna there? Yes, I'll be there.
10:05, what time?
10:05.
Maybe it's on.
Yes,
Like a PM.
Wow.
Is that PM? Yeah,
Yes.
6 PM. Yep, it's on the list. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I think I'm with you on that.
Could be. Yes, I think you are.
Yeah.
Yes, and Jim, I think you are too.
I am.
I
consider that an honor.
10:05, I'll be there.
10:04, 10:05.
Okay, personnel.
So personnel, so here we're kicking off the full year schedule of evaluations. So October 24th is the date for the first board self-evaluation. So that, as you all recall, is the meeting that Ann facilitates for us, and we kick it off with a dinner and more details to follow in terms of timing. Usually 5, and then we kick off at 5:30. The meeting, once again, I'll always ask for suggestions for discussion topics. If you can get that to me, I appreciate it. And other than that, that's it for the moment. Thank you.
Policy?
Policy. Jen and I haven't yet, but in my anticipation, I think there's lots of policies to be considering based on the legislature and things that are moving forward. But, yeah.
All right, perfect. Chairman report, I actually had something I want to report on. It has to do with CAVE, and we were aware of membership costs of CAVE for a year. And I was a little surprised. So what I did is, well, just so you know, it's $11,671 we paid for CAVE this year. So what I did is I reached out to Chris McCarthy a few weeks ago. We spoke. My question was, is there a different membership that's a little more basic membership for a lower cost? And fortunately, there's not. That's the basic cost. So my point is, I'm thinking that there's a lot of resources, and if we're going to continue to utilize CAVE, we should try to use some of the resources to get some more bang for our buck. And besides the conference, this and that, and some of the great communications they do, I'd like to, again, utilize it more for things they can offer us as a board. So, and we can be thinking about this as the year goes on, but they may be, they have opportunities to use them. So that was the main thing about it.
Go ahead. So can you, or Eileen, provide us with a breakdown of what is available, so we know what might,
I'll reach out to her and I can get some information.
Yeah, we have the booklets, which are perfect.
And did that increase from previous years, or has it always been?
Pretty similar, but it's about the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any base to compare it to, so I don't know. It just seemed like a lot of money, so.
I mean, And years ago, we used to use their policy for, it was on that for quite a while, so that would make it more, reasonable, but, we've been with Ann, with Goodwin for many years now, so. We haven't really
We'll get the
utilized
breakdown.
PD from them, so what are we getting for that money?
One of the things that's interesting, and they're willing to come down to our board and present on different topics too, so that's a lot easier.
No, they are, yeah. Okay, thank you.
And Dan, we still get the policy updates from them, because remember,
It's all access for
that we have that, and that comes, and we can look at those as well.
Do all board members get the regular emails from Kate?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was asked to make sure. we got it on.
Email.
More
emails. That's what we pay all the time.
The reason I ask, because I mean, there is some interesting things, I think, from my perspective, that we could take advantage of, and I would encourage us at our leadership
Mhm.
meeting in October to discuss what we might want to take advantage of as a board. As I think there are some things.
Jim. For my own edification, is Shipman and Goodwin tied in with Kate in any way? No, they're two separate entities
separate
that we
entities.
deal with, okay.
Yeah.
And we probably pay an annual fee to Shipman and Goodwin
No, you pay hourly, the hour.
out by the hour. Okay.
As they use it.
Yeah.
Well, I know in the policy committee, we get regular policy updates that show the red lines and what needs to be changed in policies based on new legislation.
You don't pay for those by hour. That's a courtesy to the.
Okay, that was my next question. Thank you very much.
I was gonna say the other piece is that Shipman and Goodwin for many years never was into policy, but they decided they wanted to add on to their, repertoire.
Yeah.
So they had started really just being, in terms of living, working
Which
with
makes
school
sense.
boards and.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, so there's always that question, so they were expanding their services.
And I'm sure they send that out to a number of school boards across the state based on what legislation comes down.
For whomever contracts with, and maybe that's a question when we do our leadership meeting, to investigate a little bit about. So Shipman and Goodwin started out as that an extra piece that they provide as a, including their attorney support. So is policy part of what we pay for?
No, it's a courtesy to the client.
Other check you said before, okay.
So one of the things I think Kate does, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but they provide the legislative updates, all the public acts that are.
Exactly right.
So I mean, to me, that's very useful in and of itself. There's many other things, but that one in particular, nobody else does that, correct?
No,
Those are available, right?
Those are available.
Oh,
Those are available to the general public. CAPS does one, CAVE does one. Our attorney does a legislative session. Dr. Bachman went to it for us this year. The other attorney that we've used sometimes for student issues, they also do one. So, and honestly, because they're so complex, we'll go to multiple just to try to
Sure.
pick it all up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my only point, is that certainly we have access to it and we could do our own research as board members, but it's handed to us, frankly, like Kate or CAPS, so.
I was gonna say, Capstone provides support to superintendents across the state. CAVE's mission is to support boards of education, boards, individual board members. And that's the support that, really the only support, network that we have. But we can talk more
So
about
Jennifer
that.
makes a good point about what is that support, and let's avail ourselves of it if we can.
Well, I think we should utilize the resources we have.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, so just with this upcoming meeting, I'm gonna ask Eileen to come forth with a list of,
Sure.
opportunities and services and
Yeah.
workshops or whatever that they provide, so we can see what's useful to us as a board. That would be great. Thank you.
I mean, if we have an agenda item in the future that they can help us with, I mean, they can bring them aboard too.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's it for reports by board committees. Now I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session. The time is 8:30. Executive session for discussion concerning the employment performance, evaluation, health, or dismissal of a public employee.
I'll make that motion.
Second by Alan. All those in favor? Aye. We are non-executive session.